What's going on, YouTube fam? This is the Wealth Investing Network. We do this for the win. You're getting a sneak peek into my stock portfolio and a sneak peek into my research on stocks. Today, we are talking about Ballard Power and we're talking about Plug Power. These two hydrogen stocks have been on fire, but there's a little volatility in the market today, so we got to talk about it. And before we really get into it, there's something I have to ask you to do, and that's hit that like button, turn it blue, drop a comment if you value this content, and hit that subscribe if you haven't already for that YouTube AI. So the two companies we're talking about today, there's a lot of focus on zero emissions. And yes, hydrogen fuel cells are technically zero emissions, but we're going to talk about it. Because doing my research has turned me into a little bit of a believer in hydrogen, but really just in the sense that we can't rely on our electric grid for everything. And hydrogen could be a decent alternative in some areas. What I'm trying to say is there's a lane for it. But as we jump into Robinhood, you're going to see why I think investors might be a little ahead of their skis here. So when we jump out to the year, you can see Plug Power is up over 1,000%. I'm long this stock. I actually got this stock for free. If you're interested in free stocks, check out my description, do your research on Robinhood and Webull, and if you use my links, we can both get free stocks. But anyway, with Plug Power, you see this huge rise, and now they definitely got a haircut. Ballard Power Systems, similar story. They're down 5% today. At the heights, their stock had tripled or more, but now they're coming back down. And I want to show you more than what Robinhood can. But I just want to show you their full stock chart here, just if you do a quick search on them. And also, please do your own research. Always do your own research because I'm not a financial advisor and this is not financial advice. If you're here to follow my journey, great, because these videos are for entertainment. Ballard Power and Plug Power have both been around since the 90s, and a little more than 20 years ago, both of these stocks had meteoric rises, Plug Power especially, and after their meteoric rises, they had to do reverse stock splits. They've been a penny stock for a very long time because they are really good at producing these hydrogen fuel cells, but they're not very good at making money doing it. It's a really expensive process, and that's what makes it hard for them to be profitable. I mean, look, we've talked about the process in other videos. If you're unfamiliar, check out the links in the description or the cards, pause this video and come right back. But in theory, you're generating power. And when we talk about zero emissions, basically your only byproduct is chemically pure water. But it's not that simple. To even produce these hydrogen fuel cells, you have to use natural gas, which is not the cleanest resource, and then as you process it, you create CO2. Now, to my knowledge, Ballard Power and Plug Power are in this blue hydrogen space. When they do create CO2, there's some sort of carbon capture. And in the future, what they want to be able to successfully do is use green electricity, wind power, solar power to create their fuel cells, which would actually be zero emissions. But again, a lot of electric vehicles with a regular battery already use electricity that can be sourced from wind or solar power. So if you're using wind or solar power to create a hydrogen fuel cell that will then power an electric vehicle, I mean, I think you can see how the extra steps would make it very expensive. And that's why I say there's a certain lane for it, because at the current moment, hydrogen fuel cells might have a longer range than a regular battery. So let's say you need to drive 800 miles in a truck without refueling, well, maybe that's where a hydrogen fuel cell would be ideal. Or you look at some of the things that Ballard Power is into, like buses, trains, critical infrastructure. Let's say it's auxiliary power, something that's not connected to the grid. Because if you have your grid failure, you could still have your hydrogen fuel cells powering things. One of the bread and butter for Plug Power has been making these hydrogen fuel cells for forklifts. Part of the reason people got so excited with Plug Power stock is because they renewed their contracts with Walmart and Amazon, and these hydrogen-powered forklifts have some advantages over regular forklifts. You don't have to charge them in the way you would a regular electric vehicle. You refuel it with hydrogen. And so that big contract with Walmart and Amazon was big news. They inked an agreement with SK Group, huge news. There was a lot of talk about the Green New Deal or potentially whatever the Biden administration might do. Some analysts were really bullish on the stock. And so all the while, the CEO sold so many shares, it was kind of ridiculous. In a normal market, this would concern investors, but this is not a normal market. And both Plug Power and Ballard Power did share offering after share offering. And so when a company's issuing more shares, your shares are literally worth less. But the hope is that the company is able to do really good things with that money, make their business better, maybe pay down debt. But when you're doing this over and over again to the tune of billions of dollars, I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. Ballard Power is definitely not to the same level as Plug Power, but it's worth raising your eyebrows a little bit. The company that you're invested in basically using you like a piggy bank. Okay, so I want to move quickly here. We're going to jump into my analysis based on rough estimates. As you know, there's a lot going on with the stock price and the market cap, so these can change. I included these plus signs behind the shares outstanding because these increase rapidly. Like we talked about, these companies do share offerings. And I showed you how I come up with these numbers in my How to Analyze Stocks video. So we're going to dive into Plug Power so I can update this shares outstanding number. And so according to Yahoo Finance, this number has increased significantly. So I'm going to go ahead and update that really quickly. Their PE ratios, or price to earnings ratios, are both negative. These companies are bringing in revenue, but not profits. After their expenses, debt, taxes, all those things, these are not profitable companies. And so with these companies, I do like to look at the price to sales ratios because this indicates the multiple that you pay for the stock. It's their price or market cap divided by their total revenue. Ballard Power is bringing in a little over $100 million, which is respectable, but they're valued at an almost 70 times multiple because their market cap is 8.55 billion right now. You can get out your calculator and do 8.55 billion divided by 118 million, you'll get around 70. Now, Plug Power is a little different. I do think the shares outstanding impacts this formula and how you get the price to sales ratio. So again, I'm just using a rough estimate. I'm going to say it's about 60, which is very high. You're paying a huge multiple. One reason you might do that is because of impressive revenue growth, and Plug Power's revenue growth is very impressive. Ballard Power is actually not growing at a crazy amount, but people expect that they will. And their major markets are in the US, Europe, and China. And these are all countries that supposedly are going to invest a lot more in hydrogen. But let's talk about this multiple. Hopefully you're familiar with the S&P 500. The average price to sales ratio for the S&P 500 is between 2 and 3, just roughly. But the S&P 500 measures profitable companies. These companies aren't profitable yet, even though they've had more than 20 years on the stock market to do so. Fine, fair enough. What's the average price to sales ratio for tech companies? Well, it's crept as high as 8. So if you're investing now at these prices, you're paying a high premium. But one other thing I want to look at is the current ratio. So for Ballard Power, this current ratio here is basically just assets over liabilities. Anything getting really close to 1 or under 1 really is a red flag. So this current ratio is beautiful. And on top of that, you can see they have way more cash than they have debt. They have so much cash on their books, they could pay their debt tomorrow. Now with Plug Power, I think these numbers are going to be updated at their next earnings report. Definitely watch out for their next earnings report in the coming weeks. As of their last quarter, they had more debt than cash. So that's a little bit of a red flag. But like I said, they've been doing all these share offerings. So when we get their next earnings report, I hope they paid off all their debt. This company should be debt free. Okay, so we're getting very, very close to the end of the video here. So I want to show you Plug Power's stock chart, and I want to include the simple moving averages. These are technical indicators that lag behind the actual stock price. We've got 3 of them. The blue is the 20-day simple moving average, the red is the 50-day, and the orange is the 200-day. These give us a sense of the trend, especially a stock that's in an uptrend. And as you can see with Plug Power, anytime it got a little too far away from the 20-day, this blue line, the stock would consolidate a little bit until it caught back up to the 20-day moving average. And in the past several months, anytime it got close to this 50-day moving average, it would bounce right off of it and the stock would rise higher. So this appears to be an inflection point with Plug Power because we're getting very close to the 50-day moving average. I think we could see the stock price pause around this level, and if it crashes through, that could be a very bearish sign, a very bad sign that it's going to go a lot lower, maybe down to levels that we saw at the beginning of the year. And surprise, surprise, it's the same story with Ballard Power. Ballard Power stock very closely followed the 20 and 50-day moving averages, and then it had this huge spike up. Now it's gapping back down towards this 50-day moving average. Ballard Power has a very high percentage of the general public that owns shares. It depends on what the market sentiment is about these hydrogen stocks. If the general public is still very much believers in the hydrogen economy and how big everything is going to be, well, these stocks could potentially bounce off the 50-day moving average and continue their uptrend. But I want to note that this is risky. And I mentioned before, I'm long Plug Power stock. I'm also long Bloom Energy, and you can check out my videos on Bloom Energy if you're interested. And I guess that's all we really have time for. So drop a comment if you want to know more or have questions. Please like this video, subscribe if you haven't already. It really helps the channel grow, and that helps me create better content for you. That's a win-win, and we like that here at the Wealth Investing Network. I'm really interested to hear what you think about these companies. What's been your experience? leave a comment. But if you're too shy for the comments, you can always send me an email at TheWealthInvestingNetwork@gmail.com. Thank you so much for watching. I'm going to try and upload this before the market closes, so I'll see you in the next video.